What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the W.A.D.E concept. A week later, I know it's been a while. I know the fight's been come and gone from UFC 229, and we didn't make a lot of noise for about a week now. And I did that for a specific reason. Welcome everybody that's in the chat. 5 people watching. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. But we're gonna get straight into what today's video is about. Cotter's in the chat. Tristan's already in the chat. So today's video, obviously, by the title, is what went down at UFC 229, and let's talk about it. And I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to give it a week or so, just like I guys told you on live stream. I wanted to give it a week or so to really kind of let the cards fall into place and have everything laid out before we jumped in and gave, or at least I gave my opinion on it, and you guys can give your opinion on it, obviously, in chat as well. But that's what we're doing today. So, it is Wednesday, October 17th. The fight itself, it was sad to watch, honestly. Cotter, us Conor fans, it was tough to watch, but it's the fight business, man. It's the fight business. And every time you walk to that cage, every fighter knows it's 50-50 shot, Of course, every fighter believes in themselves, and of course they think they're going to win the fight. But in every case, in every single one, thank you, Kels. In every single case, someone's got to lose. And that just happened to be Conor for, a lot of reasons that we'll talk about today. But let's rewind this story. Let's rewind back to what got us here. And that was, the bus incident, that was the press conference, that was the speculation for months that we were going to get this fight, then we get it. That was Conor showing up late to the last press conference and Khabib coming in, doing his obligation and leaving. The one thing that we always, but Blue Lips made it personal. The one thing that we always talked about with Conor is he magic? Is he someone that just possesses a self-belief that can produce some sort of manifestation into real life? That law of attraction, is it real? Is it something that some people have, and they believe in themselves so much, and they have, obviously the physical and mental skills to back it up, that they can overcome pretty much anything, regardless of who, what, where it is. And for the longest time, Conor McGregor did that. But what we saw, especially in the lead-up and in the fight itself, we saw a different Conor McGregor. We saw the same Khabib that I've seen for many fights, but we saw a different Conor McGregor. And Conor got what he deserved. Now Mayweather's going to beat. I hope that doesn't happen. We'll talk about that in a second. He stopped practicing the law of attraction. Maybe. But that was, something that he had thoroughly believed in for a long time and had used to his advantage in a lot of different cases. But what we saw with Conor was something different. We saw a guy that looked like he was happy to be there. Right? We didn't see the same guy that was and I think, it's super easy to see why. The guy's multimillionaire, has a incredibly successful whiskey business now. But we didn't see the same guy that was there looking to rip Jose Aldo's head off. We didn't see the same guy that walked into the Nate Diaz fight, even the first one, with the confidence that he was going to punch a hole through the guy's face. We saw Conor smiling, happy to be there. The focus didn't seem to be where it needed to be. Even, press conference all the way to fight day, it looked like he was just happy to be back. And there's nothing wrong with that. Conor McGregor taking 2 years off and coming back and being happy to be back in the house that he built, essentially. There's nothing wrong with that. But the guy standing across the cage, for everything that Conor had said and everything that had been said about the bus incident and everything that Conor had conjured up to sell this fight, the guy standing across the cage wasn't taking it as a fight sell. He wasn't taking it as this is business. He took it very personally. And we wondered, did Conor get in Khabib's head? We wondered, had Khabib done enough? And it's always this mental warfare when you fight Conor McGregor. Had Conor gotten into his head? Had Khabib stayed cool enough? Had he kept his composure enough? We saw after the fight that wasn't the case. Conor definitely got into his head. Conor definitely hit him where it hurt. Khabib just used it. And he's a different man. He's not a guy that it rushed to his head and it got him off of his game plan. It motivated him. And it brought him into the cage, while, albeit I'm sure he was very nervous, just like any other human would be, he used it to his advantage. And he hurt Conor badly. Over and over and over. We saw that happen. So, Sam, what's going on, brother? That's why it was sad to watch. He even apologized. So, yeah, it's not the question of did Conor get in his head or did Khabib stave off the mental warfare. I think Khabib used it. And it's not a hard concept to grasp. Khabib holds his family and his nation. People were saying that Conor was making fun of his religion. I didn't see where that was the case, but maybe I just missed something. I know he said some things about Ali, Khabib's manager, but the things that Conor did say about Khabib's family, about his nation, he takes personally, because that's how, in his culture, that's how he is brought up to respect people. His family is closest, his country, his nation he loves. That wouldn't necessarily destroy an American fighter to the point where he just lost, all control at the end of the fight. I think even if Conor had said things about my family or my country, and I went out and dominated him and had just a dominant performance, I think that would be it, because that's what you do, is you're signing up to fight within regulation rules, and the rest is the rest. But Josh, what's going on? Conor apologized after he took that second round pounding. Another thing we're going to talk about, I don't think Conor was apologizing as much in that instance, but we'll talk about it. But as we got into the fight, this is the part I like breaking down, is because, all the stuff leading up to it, all the stuff after we'll get to, but the part that I like breaking down is the fight itself. And as we get into the fight, Conor starts off like he starts off any fight, and he walks right forward on Khabib. And, Josh, the second round was brutal. And first thing he throws is a jumping switch kick to the body, a front kick to the body, and it's, typical Conor stuff. But as the first round goes forward, you see the dynamic switch. And it wasn't so much that Khabib just took over. It was almost that Conor, again, just didn't look the same. I will say that first takedown defense that Conor had, and if you guys heard Daniel Cormier talk about it, the levels of wrestling that AKA and, Eagles MMA, the Khabib's fight team, possess is so high level. Conor did basically everything right. Granted, Conor was pulling on the shorts a little bit, which is illegal. You can't grab a guy's shorts in MMA and use them to further your position or advantage. And while it looked like Conor was trying to grasp over the top and post on the back leg of Khabib when he was shooting for the single, he did grab the shorts a little bit. Can't do that. But the defense for the first takedown, because it took Khabib, again, you guys got to go listen to Daniel Cormier for the specifics on the levels and the different transitions Khabib got into. I definitely noticed the high crotch, which is one of Khabib's go-tos. Transition to the body lock. Nothing was happening. And finally Khabib gets to the double knee, single leg, low single leg, and Conor's staving everything off. Yeah, he grabbed his gloves too. And he's staving everything off, and he's doing a good job. And you sit there and you go, wow, 2 months, and this is where Conor is. But it's one thing to stop a takedown. It's another to continue to do so against a guy that has probably, when I say Conor staved him off for 4 or 5 times, Khabib probably has 10 or 11 or 12 techniques he can go to, and that's exactly what he did. At one point, it looked like Conor was going to get Khabib's back, and I was like, wow. Didn't expect that. But then Khabib literally took one arm that he had posted or wrapped around Conor's inside, I think it was his right leg, and throws Conor off of him and gets on top, and didn't do a lot in the first round. Implemented a lot of control on the ground. There wasn't a lot there that Khabib was doing. But again, it was just the control he was using, that leg pinch that he uses. Conor was doing a good job of not getting his legs completely straightened out to where Khabib could kind of inch up his body. He was keeping his legs somewhat bent so that Khabib kind of had a little bit of resistance, so he couldn't just get into full mount and just start hammering away. But Khabib did control it, and, just by that, won the first round. The second round, obviously, is the round that people are going to point to and say, this is the difference in the fight, and it very well was. Again, this is why I say we saw a different Conor McGregor. There was no, if you guys don't remember, there was no, by the way, Tristan, Khabib also grabbed the fence. Grabbing the fence is literally something that happens to every fighter if they're being taken down. That happens. The illegal knee, I can't vouch for. Conor did. He kneed him illegally and grabbed the shorts, grabbed the gloves, 100%. But in the second round, you didn't see Conor with that same movement, that magic, that kind of weird movement that we've always known Conor to have, or the pop on his shots, the explosiveness. It just wasn't there. And you can chalk it up to being 2 years off. You can definitely chalk it up. I've heard some conspiracy theories talking about Conor was drunk and he had all these drugs in his system and he was just sedated and all this. I don't believe any of that for a second. I think that Conor McGregor was not in the right mindset for this fight. I'm not saying he didn't take it seriously, because of course he did, but I think that first round showed Conor a lot of holes in his own game, and thus opened up his mind to the fact that I'm going to be taken down, or at least the fear is there of me being taken down, and therefore he couldn't fight the same the rest of the fight. For example, you don't think he was doing coke during his time off? I'm not going to talk to what he was doing with or during his time off and when he wasn't there. He could have been doing all the coke. He could have been doing every drug in the history of drugs. But until USADA or whoever comes out with a test and says Conor was on the stuff fight night, I don't think it's going to have too much to do with the fight, unless he was just abusing coke nonstop in his free time, which I doubt. I'm sure he's Conor McGregor. I'm sure he dabbled in some things. I'm not going to sit there and act like I know what he's doing in his free time, but I don't think it had any relevance on the fight itself. I don't think he was doing blow during training camp, no. But who knows? Maybe. I don't know. I would highly doubt that he was doing it that close to the fight, though. But in the second round, again, you saw just a different style of fighting from Conor, because you started to realize I can't be as elusive as I want to be, or at least in his mind, it looked to me like he was thinking, I can't be as elusive as I want to be because this guy is going to shoot on me, and I'm not going to be able to get up. Because we saw in the first round, Khabib laid on him for 4 minutes. Conor wasn't going to get up. And so you started to see that fear of the takedown. Conor, every time there was an forward advance by Khabib, he started to shift the hips away and post the front leg. Did it 2 or 3 times. You guys can go back and watch. I probably watched the fight now 4 or 5 times. And then the big right hand. Did he stop the USADA random testing? I don't think so, Tristan. I don't know. And then the big right hand from Khabib. And which pretty much shocked everyone, myself included. If you guys go back and watch my reactions to the fight, I had nothing to say. That's the last thing I thought was going to happen, was Khabib coming over the top with a right hand and catching Conor McGregor and wobbling him. The last thing I thought would happen. But it happened. And I couldn't figure it out for the life of me why. Yes, Conor holds his hands low. Conor's been known to have a great chin, but always to hold his hands low. But he's never been caught, never even been wobbled in MMA. You can, I guess, argue in the first Nate Diaz fight, the 1-2 that he landed on Conor before he shot, wobbled Conor a little bit. But that right hand from Khabib was the hardest I've ever seen Conor get hit, or at least the way it looked. And then I went back and watched, kind of the sequence that happened beforehand and what was going on. And what you see is just a simple level change from Khabib. Just a simple duck of the head. The arms go out wide for a split second. And immediately Conor shifts his eyes to Khabib's hips. And Conor's hips shift back, and he posts with the front left foot, immediately going into takedown defense mode. And the right hand is already coming over the top, and Conor doesn't see it at all. Does not even think to look for it. And when it lands flush. And even from the football world, obviously, to the MMA and boxing world, the one thing you hear is the punch that hurts the worst, or the hit that hurts the worst, is the one you don't see coming. I've seen guys like Chuck Liddell, even Connor, Rampage, whoever, Vanderlei Silva, walk through many punches during their day. I mean, walk straight through them to get to where they want to be and to get to their range to throw bombs. But it's when your chin goes is when you don't see that punch coming. When it's something where you're covering up, or you're weaving, or you're bobbing, and someone catches you in an exchange. It happened to Cody Garbrandt many times against TJ Dillashaw. And it happens to Conor, and the first thing I thought of, and maybe this is just me being a Conor fan, I was like, wow, look at how quickly, just the balance he has to be able to crab walk up against the cage and grab Khabib coming in, turn around position, and knee him on the cage. I was impressed by that. And you had to find, watching this back, you have to find times where Conor did things good, because there weren't that many. So when he did do something that was really impressive, like the being able to grapple with Khabib for the first exchange for at least a good 3 or 4 attempts, or to be able to recover so quickly after being rocked, you had to, for me anyway, I had to look at that and say, that was impressive. From the other side, Khabib fought amazingly. Everything from just establishing it. And a lot of people, and myself included, did not give Khabib an iota of credit on the feet. And that was my fault for sitting here and saying that there was no chance that Khabib was going to do anything on the feet. That this was, a striker versus wrestler only fight. And that was my fault, because if MMA teaches us anything, it's that nothing is ever as it seems. And fighters have hidden talents that we don't necessarily know about. And guys are always improving. Khabib's jab, his double jab, looked amazing. He kept Conor at bay with this double jab. He found Conor's range with the left hand. From the first left hand Conor threw in the fight, it looked like Khabib found his range and stayed outside of that and moved his head off center line and found ways to get inside that range and mess with Conor's timing and his distance. And so in the second round, Khabib lands the big right hand, immediately goes to grapple Conor, throws Conor to the ground, and unleashes some ferocious ground and pound. And again, credit to Herb Dean. I know I'd given him a lot of crap on this podcast for not necessarily doing the best job sometimes. But credit to Herb Dean for not stopping the fight when in the second round, when he very well could have. Because Khabib was landing big bombs. Obviously, Conor was there and protecting however he could, but he was getting hit with some he was getting lit up with some shots. So yeah, Herb Dean could have stopped that fight there, and we would have been talking about probably the greatest domination. Even if the fight itself was domination by Khabib, we would have been talking about it even more so if that fight stopped right there. So, credit to Herb Dean for letting Conor, see if he could weather that storm, and he did. Malignaggi was right. Conor is a quitter, just saying. I think Paulie Malignaggi has no right to have an opinion on anyone, calling them a quitter. Go look at Paulie Malignaggi's career and how his career ended, and then talk to me about how Conor McGregor's a quitter. Anyway, and again, we'll discuss why Conor's labeled a quitter, and all right, Tristan, and why in that fourth round I wouldn't necessarily call what he's doing quitting. McGregor has been in 5 fights. He's 0-5. Is that a Teddy Atlas rip right there, Josh? That's what that sounds like. A lot of Teddy Atlas coming out of your mouth. No one like your boy. There's a lot of people that don't like Conor, and that's okay. That's why I come here to eat crow on my podcast, is because I really did think Conor was going to win the fight. But he didn't, and that's when you got it. Yeah, I figured. I sounded a lot like something I'd heard recently. You know, Conor didn't win the fight, so I'm here to give Khabib all the credit he deserves. Yep. When he was talking about Tyson on Joe Rogan Experience. Anyway, where were we at? Oh, okay. So third round, Conor wins the round. I mean, there's no way that you can dispute that Conor wins the third round. It wasn't by a grand margin. He wasn't lighting Khabib up, just dropping bombs. But what he was doing was stopping Khabib's takedown. And what you saw for the first time in the fight was a change in the momentum. Conor stuffed 3 takedowns in the third round. Conor landed the bigger shots, landed a step-in Nassim, my favorite Nassim uppercut, that corkscrew front-hand uppercut. I love when he throws it. He landed it, and it hit Khabib. He caught him. Probably the biggest punch Conor threw and landed in the fight. Other than that, a lot of deep kicks, a lot of front kicks to the body. But again, nothing consequential. Nothing that had Khabib in any kind of real trouble other than maybe that step-in uppercut that popped his head back a little bit. But that was about it. But as far as judging the round-by-round basis, Conor won the third. And it's significant. As much as it would have been significant. Because Khabib had never lost a round, technically speaking. Khabib's never lost a round in MMA. And Conor gave him his first loss. Every scorecard had Conor up by... had Conor up in the third round. That's a big deal because what we're going to talk about in a second. But again, that would have had more consequence because it looked like Khabib either was taking a little bit off in that round, or he was just a little tired from the constant output of the second round, and Conor took advantage. He walked forward I will say this, Conor, you got to give Conor respect. He walked forward every single round on Khabib. Walked forward and just again, the shots weren't landing like they usually do. Like I've seen Conor throw the same combination against Eddie Alvarez, same combination against Chad Mendez, and the shots land clean, and he just wasn't landing clean. Khabib did a really good job of getting his head off the center line. When he did throw wild, sometimes Khabib threw that right hand out there kind of wild, but he did well to back it up by as soon as he threw it, closing the distance and getting his head in between that range where Conor can strike back with his left straight. So he did good. No, Josh, hey, no sorry at all, man. Yes, I'm a Conor McGregor fan, but I've watched the fight probably 4 or 5 times now, and I'm thoroughly impressed by Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I went back and watched, I can't remember the channel, but there's a channel that basically, I don't know if it's the Anatomy of the Fighter channel. One of these channels follows AKA around. And I got to say, watching that, and I know we're deviating a little bit, but I want to talk about this. Watching that and watching how Khabib is with his fellow fighters and watching how that brotherhood, how they're just a brotherhood. And how Khabib is just so well liked by everyone. He's such a great guy, and he's there always just giving his all to his team and helping Rockhold train, helping DC train, helping guys that we've never heard of. No-name guys that are up-and-coming prospects, helping them out, giving them rounds. You can't do anything but love the guy. And I have become a Khabib fan, not just from this fight, but from doing my own research and seeing how he treats his fellow fighters and seeing how he treats, people outside of his gym, how he treats his management team, how he treats DC's kids, how it just looks like he's their uncle, and how he just is so involved in that whole team, that brotherhood, and how he brought his guys from Dagestan over to AKA and help them start and help them get started. So, regardless of how I feel about Conor McGregor and his fighting style and what he kind of has meant to me as far as being a role model and being someone that got me back into this sport, that's all put aside when you see a guy like Khabib and how skilled he is. You have to give him that credit. And then on top of that, to see how great of a guy he is, you also have to look at that. And from my perspective, there's not much more you ask for in a champion. Cotter says Conor's a great athlete, whether you like him or not. Absolutely. And so is Khabib. Khabib's a great athlete. I did see Khabib playing basketball. It was like a form of basketball called Dagestani basketball. It was a little rough. We got to work on that jump shot. But he's a freak athlete, an absolute freak. But moving on in the fight, we had the fourth and final round. More of the same from Khabib. It looked like he got a second wind and dominated, finally getting the neck crank, taking Conor's back. And Conor taps, right? Conor taps. And before we get into what happens after, I want to focus specifically on Conor tapping and kind of the whole thing. Obviously, Khabib is very upset with Conor. And the whole time they're talking back and forth. You guys have heard the kind of things that have been said between them during the fight and obviously after and all that. So Conor taps to a neck crank. And for those of you that have not been in a neck crank or don't understand how badly that hurts, that can separate a man's jaw. I'm not defending Conor, but I don't necessarily think that the tail of a fighter is always going out on your shield. A guy like Conor has tapped twice, 3 times, 4 times, I think, in MMA. And again, are we going to hold fighters to going out on their shield or going out on their sword every single fight, making them, the fighter to be? That's a real fighter. He's not a quitter because he didn't tap. I don't know if I buy into that too much. And I understand the reasoning behind saying something like that, and the reasoning behind believing something like that is because you feel that they'll never quit if they don't tap. They're just never going to quit. Well, you're not going to get me to tap. I'm just going to fall asleep. In that situation, to me, I don't know how that makes that person better. They still got choked to death. Now they're dealing with brain damage on top of it. And in Conor's case, as much vitriol as was built up in this fight, Khabib would have broke his jaw. That's easily, that jaw would have been displaced 100% because Khabib's not letting go of that hold. And Herb Dean has shown throughout the fight that he is letting things progress more and more and more because this is a big fight. I mean, the biggest fight in UFC history, 2.4 million pay-per-view buys. The last thing Herb Dean's going to do is stop the fight before there's an actual, in his eyes, there's the last chance reason to. And the way that thing was twisting, he could have easily broken Conor's jaw. And so I don't understand when someone says, well, he's a quitter, he tapped. Okay, what was the alternative? Give me the alternative that doesn't make him a quitter. Oh, it's him being hospitalized and have his mouth wired shut, not being able to fight, probably done with his career, actually making him a quitter because he now cannot fight for the rest of his career. Now he can't use whatever it is, and I'm not saying this would have been the case. We don't know, thank God. But now he can't use his marketability to provide for his family, not only with the fighting, but now he can't speak correctly. Or there's something wrong with his facial structure that he can't do things. Like I don't buy into that stuff. Like I remember, I think it was somebody like Paige Van Zandt got choked out twice and just went to sleep. And everybody was like, "Oh, she's a warrior. She's so tough. She's a warrior." What exactly makes you tough about not being able to use your arms and your body anymore? And that's no disrespect to Paige Van Zandt, but if she taps, if she doesn't, Sage Northcutt's tapped before. Many guys have tapped. I don't see I don't understand if people think that's a mental shutoff, like, oh, they quit versus they went to sleep. I don't read too much into that. Because at the end of the day, isn't the goal to have more fights? The goal would be to make more money for your family, have more fights, and therefore, if you do get into a position where you're compromised, and there is literally no way out of that position, that you're either going to sleep, or you can save some brain cells, save your facial structure, find a way not to be out as long, let's do that. Going out on your shield, I'm not a big fan of. I'm not. I understand, where people, I guess, coincide with that thinking, Josh, but that's just not something that I've ever understood because you're going out either way, right? If Conor doesn't tap, if Conor does not tap out in the 4th round and Khabib does what I'm assured he's going to do and breaks Conor's jaw or leaves him to some kind of physical permanent damage, because, again, Herb Dean is in the biggest fight of his life in the world, in the UFC's life, and he's sitting there watching this, do you really think that Herb Dean is going to stop this at the precise time that it needs to be stopped if Conor doesn't tap? Because Conor's not going to sleep. That it wasn't a rear naked choke. It was a neck crank on Conor's jaw. Is Herb Dean going to have the specific ability to go, okay, now his jaw's about to break, I'm going to stop it? No, he's not going to know that. So if Conor goes out on his shield, and again, I know that people don't want to hear this, but this is probably the way it's going to happen. Do we have the rematch? Do we have another fight in the UFC for Conor McGregor anytime soon? Or does Conor say, cool, I made another cool 50 to 80 million and I'm out? And that's the last time we see Conor McGregor. Is Khabib still fueled after doing that to Conor to jump over the cage and handle his business outside of the cage as well? Does that still happen? And if it does, what happens to Khabib's people then? Then what happens to Khabib? Because not only did you end Conor McGregor's career, you also did the other things outside of the cage. So many factors that have to do with Conor going out on his shield that I cannot stand. Fighters, if you're going to go out either way, I'm not saying you should quit. I'm not saying that there should be any quit in a fighter. But if it's to save themselves from permanent damage, like imagine telling a guy that's in a knee bar or that's going to have his knee ripped apart by a leg lock or a heel hook not to tap. Imagine saying that to somebody. Like, oh, you can't tap. You're a quitter. Or no, his ACL is going to get ripped apart if he doesn't tap. Like I cannot stand that line of thinking like, oh, you should go out on your shield because that's what a true fighter would do. Don't worry about the rest of your career. Don't worry about your next fight or how you're going to provide for your family if you just, hold in your pride and say, no, I'm not tapping because it's against fighter code or it's against going out on your shield. What? These guys do this for a living. This is how these guys make money. And so in any practical line of thinking, you would think that someone would say, okay, well, yes, I'm compromised. He got me. On to the next one. You learn from it and you move on. You don't dwell on the situation, stay in the situation, end up taking more damage, and then not being able to learn from it and move forward. That makes no sense to me. So for people that were saying Conor quit and Conor's quit before, I would love to see anybody get into a neck crank. Have Khabib put you in a neck crank. Or anybody that you know, go downstairs, grab your significant other, or W.A.D.E of MMA. Go downstairs, grab somebody in your household, and tell them to wrap their arm around your chin and pull as hard as they can and see what you do. It just makes no sense when people say that. But that was the end of the fight, and, I won't get too much into what happened after because I got into it in the podcast and I felt very strongly about it. I'll just say this. After taking some time to think about it, Josh, after taking some time to think about it, this is what I've concluded from everything that happened after the fight, from Khabib jumping over the fence to Conor swinging on Khabib's brother or cousin. I'm not quite sure who the guy is yet. To the guys that jumped in and tagged Conor from behind. And if you guys watched, there was a guy that was just a fan that walked into the cage somehow. If you guys go watch, I don't know who put it on Twitter. I think Ariel put it on Twitter. Daniel Cormier talked about a random fan coming into the octagon to protect Conor. It's just some dude in a blazer. Just walked right by the Nevada State Police. Just walked right by him into the cage and just got in there and was acting like he was separating guys. Like, just a random fan from like the first row. Someone that had paid a bunch of money to see this fight and act like he was, part of Conor's entourage. It was the weirdest thing. It was so weird to see the entire thing. But I'll say this, man. Looking back on it, was it stupid? Yeah. Khabib was obviously, in that moment where he was just so frustrated with everything Conor had said, everything that had been said about his family, his country, from Conor to apparently Dylan Dennis, which I can't confirm or deny what Dylan was saying at the cage, because people have said he was making racist remarks. He's come out and said, I would never do that. I don't know how to take sides with that. I don't know how to do that. So I'm just going to leave it as we don't know. But what we did see was, Khabib take very strong, have a very strong opinion on the things that were said about him and his country and his team and his people and his family. He jumps out of the cage and he causes a ruckus. I don't think a lot happened outside of it. It was crazy watching him with a double coup de grace Finn Balor stomp from the top rope. That was pretty nuts. He got some air, too. He jumped clean over like half the people in the front row to get to Dylan Dennis. But, obviously it's not a good look for the sport, especially when you're trying to legitimize a sport as mainstream. I mean, it's just got the ESPN deal. You're broadcasting alongside basketball, alongside baseball, football, which are major popular sports. Shogun, what's up? Yes, he did. He definitely did. And to see that obviously doesn't coincide with the business model. But at the same time, Josh, it's a good question, and we'll answer it in 1 second. At the same time, it wasn't as big a deal as they're making it out to be at this point, as I made it out to be when I first saw it. Because, again, in that moment, you see a guy go over the cage, and now people are boxing Conor in the cage. That was a big deal. That's something that can't happen. If you're the UFC, I don't know what you do to combat that, because they had so many police officers. It looked like the entire Nevada Police Department. Like, it looked like Vegas, Nevada, everyone was there. And, what else can you do? I don't know. Maybe train them better to be at those kind of events, but it's the biggest event in history. You had no idea that was going to happen. I can't put that on the UFC. I can't put it on Dana White. I think you got to put it on kind of everything that happened. The way Conor, talked about Khabib's family, which I would never tell. If I'm Dana White, I never would tell Conor or anybody else to change the way they talk. And I think he said this, change the way they talk during press conferences. I'm not going to censor fighters. That doesn't make any sense. This is the fight business. Things are personal, regardless of how you look at it. The night of the fight, the weeks leading up to it, you're punching someone in the face. You're trying to hurt them. In no other sport do you try to actively hurt someone. Football, you have to tackle to make plays. There is violence involved, but you're not actively trying to make someone quit because you hurt them enough. In MMA, that's why I barely consider MMA a sport. I consider it more physical combat that has sport interaction and involves athletes of the highest level. But when you're actively trying to put someone, to make them stop moving so that you win the contest, to make them physically shut off, it's going to be personal. It's going to have personal feelings involved, whether that's rage, whether that's just anger, anxiety. All these things will come into play. Fear, excitement, all that. So I don't think you can limit what a guy says. I don't think you could Josh got jokes. I don't think you can just tell a guy not to say certain things, that cross the line, because the line's been crossed before. You think Conor's the first guy to mention someone's family in a press leading up to a fight? Do we forget what Chael Sonnen, and not to equate things and not to give Conor a pass, but did we not forget Chael Sonnen talking about what he was gonna do to Anderson Silva's wife? Do we not ever hear that? Kevin Lee talking about Michael Chiesa's mom. Like, this happened recently. Things are said to everybody in lead up to fights, especially when it's personal. Things are said that that wouldn't be said otherwise. And not everyone in this sport is by the actual true martial art, humble respect, don't talk trash, show up, show your athletic ability, and we'll leave it all in the cage. That's not everyone in the sport, and I don't think you should be able to condense everyone to that. If so, your sport's going to die off, because it doesn't promote a real sense of what's happening, because guys are emotional. Guys feel emotion. So back in the day, Chael said he was going to walk in to Anderson. I'm paraphrasing, so if I get it wrong, whatever. But I'm pretty sure he said he was going to, after he beat Anderson Silva, he was going to walk into Anderson Silva's home and slap his wife on the ass while she made him a sandwich. Something around those lines. If I'm paraphrasing that and completely butchering it, Chael, I'm sorry. You're a legend. What that interview after Fedor beat him was hilarious, by the way, last week. Kevin never said anything bad about Chiesa's mom. he was moving toward that. He was telling he said, "Bring your mom. I'll show her a good time after the fight," or something to that extent. That's where he was getting at. And obviously Chiesa went way overboard and got crazy with it. But I'm saying things are said all the time in MMA. All the time about people's family, about their friends. It's not, Conor McGregor's not the first, and he's not the last to do it. And so to sit here and go, well, we should have censored what Conor said. I don't think so. I don't buy that. Khabib obviously felt away, and he reacted in that way. It's happened before. Conor's jumped out of the cage before. Guys have jumped into the cage before. Fabricio Verdum threw a head kick at Travis Brown's coach, the guy that everyone hates. What is it, Edmund Tavaria or something like that? Dust-ups and scuffles happen. It's not the end of the world. At the time, it looked pretty bad. I was sitting here live reacting to it, and that's why I come and do these things a week later to show you guys that my mind, after going back and watching it again, and after being in taking a look at it without any bias and without any kind of I guess, as little bias as I can look at it, you start to see that it's not that big a deal. Should the commission hold Khabib's money? No. Are they probably going to are they probably going to take a percentage? Yeah. I don't think they should take anything crazy. 10%, 20%. 20% might be too much for me. I don't think Khabib did too much. 10% just because, you can't leave the cage and attempt to go attack in the middle of an innocent bystanders and basically, incite a riot. But and the suspension, 6 months, 4 months, like it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I don't think it should be anything more than 6 months because that's your champion, you want him back. But to say that Conor was wrong for saying all these things, you're coming at it with an opinion based on what Conor was saying. He might have said some things that were wrong, and we all believe that they're wrong, but his right to say it isn't wrong. You don't pull a guy's right to say something about someone just because it might get under their skin or it's a little too personal. It's not how this works. A fight promotion promotes fights, and Conor McGregor did his best to promote the biggest fight in UFC history. He did that. No matter what happened after, no matter what was said, he did that. So, definitely watching Wilder versus Fury, Josh, 100%. Going to be an amazing fight. Okay, so, Josh had a good question earlier. He says, what's Conor do in the rematch if they make it? Let's talk about a rematch. Let's talk about if Conor even deserves one. And I will look dead into the camera, and I know you guys are going to love this because you know I'm a big Conor fan. I'm going to look dead in the camera and say, no, Conor McGregor does not deserve a rematch. Based on the fight, based on how long he's been off, and based on other fighters and their performances, Conor McGregor does not deserve a rematch with Khabib. It's my opinion. I have a feeling that I'm going to be wrong in saying that he won't get one. Because I do think what's best for business, and UFC is in the business of making money because they have a lot to pay back. They will make the rematch. In my opinion, they are going to make the rematch. What do I think is the right fight? What do I think is the fight that needs to be made, that already has a built-in storyline that we've been wanting to see for years now? It's obvious. It's Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. It's clear as day. As a fight fan, that's the fight you want to see. There is a part of me that would love to see what Conor would do in a rematch, how he adjusts to Khabib. Or what does Khabib do? Does Khabib even change up his game plan? Because it didn't look like he had done anything different from what he had done the past 26 fights. It looks like he's the same fighter regardless who's in front of him. He did a good job of avoiding Conor's left hand, gauging distance and timing, and finding out Conor's range. And I don't think those things, will leave him. I think that's something once you see it, it's like riding a bicycle for fighters. Once you see a guy's range, and once you see what he likes to do in his movement, that's something that you can prepare for again. But that's a part of me. All I want to see, like That's a kind of what I would like to see if Conor's involved. What I really would like to see overall, though, is Tony and Khabib. It's the only fight that makes sense. Well, from a who is the best in the world standpoint. From a money standpoint, the rematch makes all the sense in the world. Makes all the sense in the world. Because of what happened after the fight, and because people love storylines, and I'm one of those people. I've always said I'm one of those people. But because more casual fans and more fans that don't typically tune into the UFC see what's happening. It's all over ESPN because they're partnered with them. It's all over Fox Sports. It's all over USA Today, Washington Post. It's all over everything. And so people see that, not knowing anything about the backstory, anything about Conor or Khabib, but just seeing two guys, Conor, obviously the biggest star in MMA, and Khabib now, because of the rub you get when you beat Conor, being a semi-big star in MMA right now. I mean, he's talking about fighting Floyd Mayweather, which I don't think will ever happen. I don't think Dana goes through that fiasco twice. But they see those things. Now they would like to see it again because they missed the first time, right? Most people, even though 2.4 million people watched, most people didn't see the fight. They saw or care about the fight. They saw what happened after, and now they want to see the second fight. Now they want to see, okay, well, Khabib jumped out of the cage. What's Conor going to do to get him back? It's always the one-upsmanship of what happens next, right? So people are going to want to see that fight. Personally, yeah, there's a part of me that wants to see it. There's a part of me that wants to see Conor go and because the same logic of thinking would be, well, Nate dominated him the first time they fought, and Conor came back and won that fight. Could he do that again? Could he make the necessary adjustments? And I do think Conor would have the ability, because Conor didn't really show a lot as far as his offensive prowess to Khabib. I think Conor would have the ability to be the more improved of the two fighters in a rematch. Does that matter? Does Conor's improvement reach the level of fighting ability that Khabib has already reached? I don't know. And I don't know if we'll see it. I would, if I had to bet my money, which, W.A.D.E concept, we're, I hear balling. But if I had to bet my money on a fight, all the money I had, it would be Conor and Khabib again, just because of the money they're going to make. But Ferguson is a beast. He's a machine. He just doesn't stop. I would purchase a rematch for sure. So would I. And a lot of people would too, regardless of the fact that people would moan and groan and say it's not the right fight. And it's for the best in the world. The only way it's the right fight is if Conor comes out and beats him. Because you're like, well, okay, now we have a trilogy. That's interesting again. But it sucks for a guy like Tony, who's all he's done is win. All he's done is win. Guys, do you realize that Tony Ferguson came off of catastrophic ACL surgery? I think it was ACL and MCL surgery. And all he did was tear his ACL completely off, MCL gone, and just comes back in 5 months and beats Anthony Pettis, former world champion at 155. Makes him sit on the stool, makes Duke Rufus stop the fight because Anthony's hands were broken, but gets rocked in the first round or second round. Gets rocked in the first. Comes back and starts dominating the fight. Amazing. Like, you can't tell me that guy doesn't deserve a shot at Khabib. I know they tried to book this fight 4 times. I know it's one of those that the world just doesn't seem to want to put on, but we need it. We need the fight. And I don't know who I would pick in that fight. I honestly don't, because like Josh says, Tony just comes forward. That cardio is ridiculous. His pace is unbelievable. One thing that does concern me, Tony doesn't spar anymore at all. He said so after the fight. And that might be why he gets caught a lot and his chin's a little, But what happens if a guy like Khabib gets you and you're not going to be able to roll and sprint away from him because Khabib's pressure is just as much? I don't know. But that's the fight that needs to happen for just to declare who's the best 155er in the world. And I don't even know if that would do the trick because you got Michael Chandler over in another promotion that's a monster. But in the UFC, who's the best 155er? Conor was in that discussion. I don't know if he is anymore. If they give him the rematch and he improves and wins a rematch, then we'll put him back in that discussion. But for now, it's Khabib and it's Tony. And so, moving forward, what happens next? What happens to both the guys that were in the main event? Conor will as he's doing right now, it looks like he's thoroughly happily. I mean, he immediately got on Instagram and said, "I want the rematch. I can't wait for the rematch." He looks like he's thoroughly happy doing what he's doing, promoting his whiskey. He's like going across the nation. That looks like it's a blast. Going to Dallas Stadium, throwing a football like the uncle from Napoleon Dynamite. Like, it looked terrible, but he's having a good time. He's on tour, just promoting his whiskey, doing that business, and making money for himself, and good for him. Khabib is doing his own tour. He's doing, getting to meet Vladimir Putin, getting to go and talk to TMZ, and sticking up for, again, showing his loyalty by sticking up for his fighters. If you guys didn't hear, he was threatening to leave the UFC. I think they resolved it, but he was threatening to leave the UFC if Dana White suspended the guy that jumped in and tagged Conor from behind. I'm not sure what they did to resolve it, but Dana White says they're good. So I don't know if I should believe him. But moving forward, I think Khabib, proper 12 Irish whiskey. That stuff's not bad, guys. You saw me drinking on stream. I think it's all right. I mean, the guy's definitely promoting the shit out of it, so props to him. But I think Khabib defends his title as soon as we hear. So October 24th, we're going to hear from the Nevada State Athletic Commission on what they're going to hand down for not only Khabib, but Conor as well, as far as sanctions and suspensions and fines. I'm sure, again, I don't think that they're going to be as harsh on him as I previously thought, because he didn't do too much. He jumped the cage. He left the arena of fighting. I get that. He put some people in danger, but he didn't hurt anyone. So I don't think they're going to give him too much. I don't think they're going to throw the book at him. But what does it say moving forward about the legacies of both fighters? Obviously, it puts Khabib in the conversation for pound, greatest of all time. I would like to see him beat a couple of more top guys. I'd like to see him beat a Tony Ferguson, a Kevin Lee, maybe defend 2 or 3 more times. I don't know if he's interested in doing that. Josh Thompson has said Khabib's interested in retiring undefeated, so I would assume that'd be sooner than later. The GSP has come out and said he would like to fight Khabib. That would be interesting. That would definitely put you at the tops if you beat GSP for pound, best of all time. GSP's also said he wants to come out and fight Conor. Or he's interested in both of those. So I don't really know. For Khabib's legacy, it's pretty simple. You just keep winning, and you're the best ever. If Conor comes back and they do the rematch and Conor beats him, we have an interesting storyline on our hands. And that is an interesting matchup. Just because, what does Conor do to adjust? What does Khabib do to adjust to some of his small, kind of minuscule mistakes? Does he change anything that he did? If you guys listened to Joe Rogan's podcast, you heard John Kavanaugh come out and talk about how he should have been more offensively minded, and really pushed the attack in camp versus just being so defensive that it almost created a reality of defensive mindset for a guy like Conor, who is naturally gifted offensively, even if it's in a counter motion. You almost switch the mindset of a guy that's so gifted moving forward and being aggressive to make him almost regress and fold into himself and say, we're going to be defensive. We're not going to let him do this, but don't think about what it is that you're going to implement. That's kind of where they were, and I think that's what he was talking about he wants to fix. Bali says, do you think a win over Ferguson is enough to solidify him as the lightweight GOAT? Probably. That would be wins over 3 former world champions. I don't know who else in lightweight's done that, because he did beat RDA handily. Obviously, RDA wasn't a champion at the time, but you beat Conor McGregor, former champion, biggest superstar in MMA history, and then you beat Tony Ferguson, 11-win streak, former champion. Maybe one more fight, maybe a Kevin Lee or somebody like that, but beat Edson Barbosa. I think that would be enough to solidify him as lightweight GOAT. As far as the greatest of all time, regardless of weight class, I think you would want to see him fight as stupid as this sounds, you'd want to see him fight a GSP, or somebody of that caliber. I don't think a Nate Diaz fight does anything for him, other than make him some money. But as far as GOAT status, Tony Ferguson, GSP, probably right off into the sunset. But that's Khabib's legacy, just keep winning. For Conor, what's next for Conor? That's the question I've been going over in my head the entire week. What's next for Conor McGregor? If it's not Khabib, what's next? They just signed a 6-fight deal. Who would Conor come back and fight? Nate Diaz at 165 would be intriguing. Shevchenko might mess Conor up. No, I'm just kidding. I can't wait for that Shevchenko fight though too. That's gonna be a doozy. Her and Joanna. But what? Yeah, I don't know. Could we very well see Conor just ride off into the sunset? I don't know. I would love to see Conor come back and find a way to combat Khabib. That would be interesting, but it's not what I want to see right now. I'd like to see Khabib Tony, and then have Conor. But again, I don't know. I don't know if you risk giving up that rematch for the money that's to be made doing that. Whatever the case, we saw history, guys. Biggest fight in UFC history. Conor McGregor returns after 2 years. Khabib Nurmagomedov solidifies himself as the champion at 155, as the best currently in the world. Tony Ferguson's still there, but for now, that's what we solidify. And moving forward, we'll see. We have to wait a week or so now, and I think it's exactly a week. Yeah, we got to wait exactly 1 week, and we will see, and we'll be back here talking about it, obviously. But that's what I thought of UFC 229, guys. I thought it was revolutionary. I thought it was intense. I thought that we didn't see the best Conor McGregor that we could have seen. I thought he was a little bit, his timing was a little off. He was flat-footed in the octagon, which I've never seen Conor be flat-footed. Usually bouncing around. And if he is completely flat-footed, he's doing a lot with his upper body, moving. It was like he was just letting the fight happen versus, implementing his game plan and implementing his style of fighting. And that's usually what we've come accustomed to with Conor. And so when you see that he's not magical, when you see that he doesn't do the things that are just otherworldly that we're used to him seeing or used to him doing, to guys like Eddie Alvarez, Jose Aldo, Max Holloway, all these guys that Conor just found a way to outclass, it's odd to watch. It's odd to look at him and go, well, that just looked like a normal fighter. It just didn't look like he had the sting on his shots. The movement wasn't there. The confusion, the different techniques that Conor has didn't quite land. And it was odd to see. And so I have no idea. What do I reckon the punishment will be? 6 months and a fine? Probably. I would say, 4 to 6 months for Khabib. Probably 4 to 6 for Conor too, just because he did take part in some of the aftermath. A fine for Khabib, I would hope it wouldn't be anything crazy. 10%, I wouldn't even want to see him get a fine, but it's the commission; they're going to fine people. Conor will probably get 10% too, but Khabib will definitely get fined in probably 6 months. But yeah, Josh, the pop wasn't there. The quickness that Conor possesses, like you heard Eddie Alvarez after their fight go, yeah, he was strong, but it wasn't so much he was strong, it was how fast he was. You didn't see that speed in the strikes. You didn't see that offensive counterpuncher that bewilders people with how quick he can return and land accurately. It wasn't as accurate as usual. And it just, I keep going back to how flat-footed he was and how he just stood right in front of Khabib, and Khabib stood right in front of him, showed no fear, and Conor didn't make him pay for it. So I think if you go back to the drawing board, Conor McGregor still is Conor McGregor. 2 years is a long time to be off. I know we talk about ring rust and how it doesn't exist for some guys, and some guys it does, but it's tough to get that timing back, and it's tough to be in that environment if you haven't been there for 2 years. But that's what I thought. You guys let me know if you haven't in the chat already. Let me know what you thought. Real quick, Shogun says McGregor versus Barbosa, UFC won't put him against another wrestler like Lee. I don't think Conor even comes back to fight a guy like Barbosa. At this point, it's got to be, title shots, massive fights or nothing for Conor McGregor. And that's just what it is. He's superseded all different fights. He's not going to take the long road back to the title. He's going to do 165 super fight, title fight, Khabib rematch, maybe George St. Pierre catchweight, Nate Diaz trilogy. That's all he's doing. He's not doing any of these, get back to the title fights. Just nothing, not going to be for him. Conor versus Eubanks, make it happen. Make it happen, Dana. This poor Eubanks girl, man. She does have a fight on 230, but she goes from main eventing to the prelims. For Christ's sakes, Dana, throw her a bone. Anyway, I know the energy levels are a little bit lower today, guys. I wanted to make this more of a serious podcast and really talk about what I thought of the card and what you guys thought. And kind of, like I said, as the cards kind of settled into place, how we deal with what we're going to have as a company for the UFC and as a champion for Khabib and as a superstar for Conor and what he does next and what everyone does going forward. But we don't have all the answers yet. Things are, leaking out little by little of kind of what's going on behind the scenes. And if the UFC doesn't know yet, we sure as hell don't know. So when they find out, I'm sure they'll let us know or someone will. But until then, this has been the W.A.D.E concept, and you guys already know we are debating everything. Quick update, we will be back at least once now and later. T-Bone. Wait, T-Bone Future 68 Whiskey? Hold on. Now and later. All right, hold on. Don't come up in the chat disrespecting the proper 12 by giving it this T-Bone Future 68, all this other. You know the deal, all right? We support the proper 12 in here. Don't make me get the Irish accent out on you. I don't want to have to do that right before I sign off. And by the way, you're late now and later. I know you're here now, but later we won't be on, okay? So you need to change your name to already here and staying the whole time, okay? Can we get that changed now and later? I do like now and laters. They're nice. They're tasty. They're tangy. I like them. But come on, we're about to sign off and you jump in the chat and talk about T-Bone Future 68 Whiskey. What is going on? The proper 12 is what we drink here. Fine Irish whiskey. Anyway, yeah, we will definitely be back a week from today. Maybe a couple more, maybe do a little shorter. All right, Bali, proper tap. That was a nice one. I'll give you that. Maybe a little shorter form. Yeah, that's right. Now and later, yep. Medic 68, yep. Man, y'all got jokes today. I'm glad you guys had super energy levels. I literally just got off working the double and my energy's so low. But I thank you guys so much for tuning in, man. Yeah, next time we will be talking about what the Nevada State Athletic Commission hands down for the suspensions for Conor McGregor and Khabib. We'll talk about UFC 230. Obviously, we didn't get to talk about it much today. Daniel Cormier, Derek Lewis, big late addition to the main event, and a massive card that we definitely will be watching. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, this is the W.A.D.E concept. We are debating everything. And yes, Conor McGregor lost. We're still fans, okay? I know you guys can crap on him. We're still fans. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much. Bali, now and later, Josh, Kelsey, obviously, Tristan, everyone in the chat. I love you guys. Take it easy. We'll see you next time.